Hello, James.
Hi.
Oh, you did that on purpose, didn't you?
Yeah.
Thank you. How's it going?
No, amazing. Absolute pleasure to be here, honestly.
No, listen, I'm really glad to have you here. I've known of you for a long time, obviously known the podcast for a long time, and it's one of these things where I've seen you so much like on Instagram, and now you're sat right here. It's like one of those strange moments.
Oh, okay. Well, no, thank you.
No problem. But for the very few people that might not know who you are, then please introduce yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is James Knight-Paccheco. So as well as the podcast, which is a bit of a side gig, I'm actually a chef consultant, and I just basically, my job is to support all things hospitality, and I also run something called the Dubai Chefs Collective, which is basically sort of 100 of the top tier chefs, and it's basically a sort of group where we support each other in terms of mental health.
Okay, that's awesome, because I think that chefs, I can only imagine some of the things that get said on that group.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you know, as I said, none of us are psychologists there. The point is that if somebody's going through a sort of particularly difficult time, we're always there to support through, you know, whether it's a chat or whatever it is, because chefs are not particularly, they're emotional people, but some of those sort of tougher emotions tend to sort of stay in and then linger into sort of darker things. So, you know, we wanted to have a space where they felt free to have a chat.
Well, being a chef, which I am not, but I have worked in hospitality for 28 years. And being a chef, I think, is a very unique role. And as you say, with having a group of 100 to support each other on a mental health perspective, I think it takes a chef to understand a chef, But what I want to ask you is, have you always wanted to be a chef? Where did this all start for you?
So the first thing that people always ask me is, why do you have two weird names? So I have two surnames. Knight is my father, he's British. Pacheco is my mum, and she's Venezuelan. Okay. So I was born in Venezuela. I was there till, sort of 9, 10, I think. And we were always around food. So the South American hospitality is family and food. Doesn't matter what it was. It's always an inviting sort of culture, I would say. And then I always wanted to be, so there were two paths that I was going to go down. One was being in the fire brigade.
Okay.
But I had asthma, so they were like, no. From a very young age, they said, well, you have asthma, so you can't do it. And then there was music. So I studied music at the same time throughout my sort of, when I started working in kitchens when I was 13. But I was
13?
13, yeah.
How?
But I was studying to become a musician. But at the same time, I was working in restaurants.
Whose kitchen were you in at 13? Because that is young.
Yeah. So the local university. So I'm from, in the UK, I'm from Exeter, down in the southwest. Every sort of Friday, Saturday night, there were functions, and large functions. They could have been like white collar boxing or something like that. And they always wanted people to do the washing up, because these were functions of around 1,000 people plus. And one mate was doing it. It was easy money because you got cash in hand straight away after you worked. And I got hooked because of the environment.
What was it about the environment that hooked you in?
I think it was just like loud, leery, full of mental characters, like a proper pirate ship. And the lady who was sort of in charge of the dishwashers, because we were all like 13, 14, was a Scottish lady called Emily, and she was a psychopath, but in a really good way, So she was fantastic, and then the chefs were just wild, So and they were, those guys they weren't fit. They were just like huge bellies, running around doing all sorts of stuff, and it was just really interesting. And then that sort of snowballed as I got older. But it got me full on early.
The energy.
But at the same time, the family thing, my mum always cooked, my dad cooked, everybody cooked. So there was always some sort of occasion, and food always seemed to play a big role in the family.
And were you being drawn into helping at home? Asked to cook, or you wanted to help? Did you learn anything from that?
I wanted to, because I was always very inquisitive as a kid. So I wanted to know everything about everything. Even now, if I don't understand something, I will keep digging until I understand. So my sisters didn't really like to cook too much, but I was always in the kitchen because I think it was just the fire and the flames and where everything, knives. So
it's dangerous.
It's dangerous.
It's a very dangerous environment.
So I really enjoyed it, but I also like the fact that from water, flour, you can make bread.
Yeah.
It's just like a kind of magic in a way. And also there's a lot of chemistry and science behind it, but at the time you don't think about it. It was just about making beautiful things, and the fact that you got to share it and on the table. And that was the other big thing, is that we always ate together on a table, no TV, nothing. And when we were on that table, it was pure family time. And I think that's really important. So that's what it really taught me.
It's definitely something that's getting lost. I mean, I was in a restaurant the other day, and it wasn't a very nice one, and I won't name which one it was. But I was looking across at another table, and there was a guy there, and he had two sons, and the one son is looking at an iPad, and he must have been about 9 or 10 years old, and the dad is feeding him over the iPad. I know I've really, really segued, but it was one of the most strangest things. And the more I see stuff like this, I think, how, as you were saying, how families are missing the essence of sitting down, turning to have dinner together. It's
right.
Yeah.
And that engagement part, I think, is so crucial, because part of breaking bread and sharing a meal together is about sharing your day.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And especially with your family, it's a kind of, and if you think about it in a really strange way, it's a kind of daily therapy session with your family, with your most trusted ones, where you talk about what happened on that day, what are you looking forward to, who upset you, all that kind of stuff. And for me, that is such an important thing to do from a mental health perspective, just from a human engagement perspective. And I think that scenario that you just mentioned is all too common these days. And I think personally, I think it is extremely sad, because you're losing that art of connection. And restaurants, are a place where they should make you feel that you're in their world and you're being well looked after. It doesn't matter what's going on in your life. Those restaurants are there to make you feel amazing and for you to be able to connect again. So I agree with you. I think it's really sad.
It's because it's sad because I completely agree with what you're saying. When it comes to a restaurant, the idea of a restaurant, I was an 80s kid, like young, sort of, 14 and below. And you'd go to a restaurant almost as a treat. And all the restaurant's really doing is it's going, let us do the cooking, let us do the heavy lifting.
Right.
But you still have the same conversations. You still have the same connection. It's still the same process. And the restaurant industry has been built off of the back of taking that home environment and putting it into a different surrounding.
Yeah, 100%.
What was your first experience of a restaurant then?
I mean, there were very many different experiences, I would say. But I think the ones that really blew me away, when I was doing my third year at college, and we were sort of about to graduate, but they took us away to France. And it was my first ever fine dining Michelin meal. And I will never forget it, because it was my first ever sort of tasting menu experience. But at the same time, the produce was unbelievable. And the way that the chef just curated that menu, it blew my mind. And I think ever since then, I've been really hooked on real high-end fine dining. But that memory will never die.
Do you remember what you actually ate? I'm probably asking you.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was, I would say it was traditional French fare, really. And you can imagine it was from snails to frogs' legs and those sorts of things. And we finished up with a dark chocolate souffle. That was the last one. But he did it for a table of 15 people. So if you know the technicalities of how to make a souffle, one, to then make it for 15 people, but all of them to be absolutely perfect.
So for the uneducated, talk me through it.
Well, look, so you have to have what you call your base, your creme patisserie. So in British terms, you'd call it a very thick custard. And that custard is then flavored with whatever you desire. So for example, if we're going to go classic British, we'll say a rice pudding souffle, right? So you have your rice pudding, you'd overcook that rice pudding and blend it to almost like a puree. And then on the side, you start making your pure egg whites to make a very fluffy meringue. Then you slowly whip or mix that together. So that's part one. Then you've got your ramekin. So in your ramekin or your base, or it could be a copper pan or pot or whatever, then you have soft butter. Technically, you have to, with a brush, lift, brush up all around the entire pan or the entire ramekin, because that helps for the souffle to rise evenly, right? And then you've got the sugar around it. And then, okay, you put it into the actual ramekin itself, make it look beautiful, and keep it in the fridge. So during service, if you were in a proper professional kitchen, if you start service at 7 p.m., you make your souffles at 6:30 or even 7 o'clock, right? But then the key is the oven. Now, the oven needs to be around 200 degrees Celsius or 220 degrees Celsius, which is extremely hot, with a full fan. So that means you need a convection oven that has to be blowing aggressive hot air continuously. So as you're about to cook it, when they say away, there should be nothing in that oven except the souffle. Nothing else. And it's 7 to 8 minutes. And you can't open the door. You can't hit the oven, otherwise something will happen to the souffle. So there are a million things
Yeah, I was gonna say.
that can go wrong during the souffle. A waiter could drop it. Somebody could bump into you. So but that's what I'm saying. To get 15 out perfect is not a joke, you know? But that's just one of the many layers of magic that happens in kitchens and restaurants.
Do you think people don't understand the skill set, the level of skill that goes into a high-end restaurant?
Yes, I don't think they do.
Because I genuinely believe, I can hold my hands up, I think I've always been one of those people. I've never truly appreciated fine dining. And I think it's more to do with the dining experience itself, where I find it quite fussy, where I want to sit down, I'm a very casual individual, as you can see, but I like to talk and laugh and joke. Fine dining, it's almost like you can't really allow yourself to relax because there's always people around you. But from a food perspective, it's like, what is the difference of skill set here compared to, let's say, a premium casual or a casual?
Well, look, I think your first point, it used to be super stuffy. And you're talking about high-end Michelin dining. And now the tables have turned a lot. And restaurateurs and chefs have got wise that they need to bring in that sort of casual element to the service. So they've relaxed it a lot more than they used to, which is really nice because you do get to have that engagement and you try to make people feel really, really welcome and not alienate people. But then when it comes to the level of chefs or the level of technicalities, it's huge. You're not only a chef, you're a scientist, you're a chemist.
Yeah.
You have to understand everything about everything. And there's also like an orchestra or a ballet, you have to understand what everybody is doing at the same time. Now, as a guest, what you don't realize is that the chef who is running the pass, so who is basically in charge of orchestrating what we call the service, that chef is fully responsible for how the restaurant runs in terms of timings and how the kitchen runs at the same time. Now, in order to do that, you can either be a complete mentalist and put everybody in a very tough position, or you stay calm and, you do the job.
Which one were you?
For the first part of my career, I was a complete psychopath, because that was the only way I knew, until I went to Le Manoir aux Quatre Saisons with Raymond Blanc, and then I saw how they were running their kitchens.
Sorry, why was it the only way you knew?
Because I worked I worked in places like Gordon Ramsay at Claridge's at the time when Gordon was having something like, I think, 17 Michelin stars in London, in Mayfair, in the vicinity of 1 kilometre. And those kitchens were extremely aggressive. And I always say it's like having 50 hungry lions in one cage. Everybody wants to get to the top.
So, is he really like that?
No. So I was fortunate enough to sit with him in his house when we were asked to cook at a barbecue at his house. So he used to run the London Marathon and still does incredible things. He's running triathlons and all sorts of things. But back then, he used to run the London Marathon with his wife, and it was always on a Sunday, as you know. And we were asked to cook at his house, in his residence, and after the barbecue, and he still is a big hero of mine. He literally, so I was sat in his front room, and he sat next to me and talked to me just super normal, very calm. How are you guys? And just had a normal chat. And it was about 10 to 15 minutes. But I just remember thinking, like, oh my God. And I had a huge amount of respect for him. But then when he did that, the level changed. And what it made me realize is that and I say this to everybody, if you are being paid 30, 40, 50 million US dollars to be a complete nutter on TV, you're going to do it. You're going to do it because that's going to change your life. That's going to change your family's life, and you're set forever.
And it's what we're tuning in to watch.
And don't forget that a television show is a form of entertainment. So it wouldn't be good TV if everything ran smoothly and everything was very calm, and because you'd have no ratings. So you have to, along with the executive producer of the show, just like an executive chef of a hotel or a restaurant, you have to curate the experience,
the drama,
the drama for the audience, right? But genuinely, he's incredible. He's a really amazing guy, very caring, and still what he's done for the industry globally is phenomenal, like genuinely phenomenal.
Yeah. No, and what you said, and the reason I asked you is because you do see the shows and you see him going ballistic, and you wouldn't want to be on the, because I actually wanted to ask you, when you're in the kitchen, okay, and I've had a number of chefs on, and funny enough, I've never asked them this, but when you're in the kitchen and you do have the psychopathic inside line, how do you process being spoken to like that? And I will put a caveat in there, because I will say right now, every kitchen I've ever been around, which has been many, and I actually spent a lot of time doing outside pass. So you're both of you are controlling the flow of you're calling the tickets and everything like this. And you have to have, in all the noise and the chaos, there's a very cathartic relationship going on.
Right.
Especially with the guy on the outside.
Yeah.
So you don't poke the bear.
Sure.
You're just saying, chef, this is going a bit long. Can I get that?
Right.
And everything else. But after every hectic shift, the chefs all sit down together and they all have a drink and they all like this. But my question still is the same. When it's happening, like, how difficult is it to process being spoken to like that?
Nobody puts a gun to your head. You know what you're getting yourself into. When you're going into hardcore professional kitchens, you know what you're getting yourself into. So, and the other thing to understand is that what people don't understand is that when you're being spoken to like that, it's the position that they're talking to you at. So if you're a commis chef or a chef de partie, and then you've got the head chef, it's the position. It's not the person. It's the position. Now, again, I've been in many services where I'm cooking, it's hardcore, it's a Saturday night, Dave is being screamed at, and he's like, James, I'm just going to go and get the bread downstairs. And I'm like, all right, it's weird, because, the pastry's just over there, but yeah, go and get the bread. 15 minutes later, where's Dave? Oh, he's done a runner.
Oh, really?
And that's common. It's common. Because some people can't handle the pressure. And that's okay. That's okay. But when you're stepping into an environment that says Michelin-starred kitchen, expectation
is huge
of the guest, expectation of the front of house, of everything, it's really, really big. But then, okay, over the years, have expectations changed? Yes and no. I think it depends on where in the world you're also dining. Especially if you go to France, still France is, they really, like many chefs, but specifically I would say in France, Michelin is absolutely the end game.
France is the original.
Right.
And I don't know how many people know that. I only found that out a couple of years ago. I'm going to make myself sound silly here, but I did a ICCA cooking course.
Right.
Because cooking was never my strong suit. So I did it because I didn't know that much about food. And as an F&B director, I knew a lot more about B. And so I did this, and it really opened my eyes to the French influence, which is all of it.
Yes, 100%.
The whole thing is France.
Yeah. The Michelin guide is 125 years old. It started in 1900. So, of course, it is revered throughout the world. And again, people say it's very political at times. Because they only want to sell their guides and this sorts of things. But at the end of the day, if you're featured, let's say you don't get a Michelin star or you don't get a Bib Gourmand, but you're just featured in the guide, that immediately pushes up the business by 30%. So imagine what that does to you. What that does.
Has it lost any of its integrity over the years? Is it? Am I right? If I'm wrong, please correct me. That Marco Pierre White gave some, or if not all, of his back.
He gave his back, yes. So the reason being is because, number one, he didn't want to live a lie. He wanted to be in that kitchen cooking. He didn't want to be one of those chefs that just had a name. Number one. Number two, and you can see these interviews everywhere, and he still sort of mentions it, is that he didn't want to be critiqued by people who were far less skilled than he was. So in the end, that's why he gave his stars back, and a few chefs did that, by the way.
And where you say critique by people that are far less skilled than him, is that food critics or the general growth of the foodie culture? So
what he meant, it wasn't necessarily about the critics, it was about the Michelin inspectors themselves. But it was something that he alluded to then, and a lot of chefs still allude to now, whether it's in terms of food influencers or restaurant critics.
Please explain the difference, because we spoke briefly outside before this, and you put it really, really well. And I think that Dubai has an incredible food influencer culture, which a lot of people in hospitality, myself included, have a very interesting opinion of, which is sometimes you think it works, other times you think, who the hell are you? Do you know what I mean? But how would you describe the difference then?
Well, look, there is a massive difference. If we talk about, first of all, a restaurant critic or a restaurant food writer, their job is to dine, could be breakfast, lunch, or dinner in the same day, and to really understand the overall picture or the overall experience of what that restaurant is trying to create. And then they'll write about it in a very constructive kind of way, right? At the same time, they're also a journalist. So their job is to dig deep into that experience, into the chef, and also to know the history of the menu or the dishes. And so it's a real full-on overview, I would say, of what dining is all about. So then if you go on the other landscape, which is a foodie influencer. And now, an influencer, in my opinion, you've got the ones which are all about themselves and basically saying where they are and why this is tasty, so on and so forth. But to me, that doesn't give me any information. It's not of service to anyone. Whereas a restaurant critic, whether it's a good write-up or not, it's still of service to the wider community or to the punters coming in. So, and there is a real fine line. There is a real fine line. But again, is it an influencer that does only bread? Is it an influencer that only does street food? Because a restaurant critic generally will go high-end casual to super high-end dining. And I talked to a lot of people about this. And also I talked to a lot of food writers about this, and it's a double-edged sword. And if you're going to name yourself as a food influencer, then your job is to influence the crowd to make sure that they come to that specific place, not because you're being paid to name the place, but because you genuinely believe it's an incredible place to come. And it's not a brand, by the way. Also, influencers, it's not about the brand. It should be about the chef or the values behind that specific eatery.
So how do the food critics and the food writers speak about the influencers?
Well, I mean, honestly, I think at times when I've spoken to them, they feel the same, or almost the same as chefs.
How do the chefs feel?
Well, I think everybody knows, especially when it first sort of came to light, chefs and restaurateurs didn't get influencers at all. There was the old age fight of, hi, I've got, 50,000 influencers. Can I have a meal for free?
Yeah.
And that was that. It wasn't because when a critic comes, they pay. Right?
Which I think is a massive, exactly, yes.
Which is, okay, so you're willing, whether it's going to be a good experience or a bad experience, then you're willing to put your hard-earned cash right there. So that's the thing, But it's I think that the lines have got so blurred, and it's very difficult. So now, when restaurants are working with food, because food critics don't want to know, they don't want the chef to know, they don't want the restaurant to know that they're coming in,
which is hugely important,
which is cool,
which is very, very cool,
right?
I think I don't know if they still do it. Is it Time Out? I think Time Out here, they used to anyway. When a new venue would open, you'd get their section of it, and you didn't even know they'd been in. Which I think is fantastic, because that's what you actually, as an operator, that's what I consider to be a proper opinion. You actually came in, you actually experienced it, then you went and spoke about it. We didn't know you were here, because once you know, it's like mystery diners. The minute that you actually even think that person's a mystery diner, everyone turns everything up to 11.
True.
And you get a false representation of what actually is happening.
But then there's the other thing, is that I would never write or even speak about a restaurant if they've just opened the doors, because it's not fair on that restaurant to judge them immediately after they've opened. And that's the one thing I can't understand.
And explain to people listening why that is.
Well, look, an engine in a car, if it's brand new, it needs to be run in. And it's the same thing in a restaurant. you need to give that restaurant time to mature almost. So what some new openings do really well is that they'll say, look, it's our soft launch, and we'll charge you 50% of the bill because we know we're going through teething problems. There could be some snagging, all that sort of thing.
It's a very good tactic.
Right?
Yeah.
And at least you know, okay, fair enough, you know? But at the same time, on the flip side of things, when restaurants are charging you full whack, but then service is horrendous, food is awful, and then of course you're not going to come back. You know, so that's what I'm saying is that there's got to be this fine line. So if I was to open a restaurant, I would full on be hands up and be like, by the way, soft launch, 50% off, and give us the critique and let us know what we're doing right and tell us what we're doing wrong. But no food writers are to come in. Don't judge us, whatever.
Yeah.
And then after week 6 or week 8, once everything has been embedded,
You're 100% correct.
then okay, bang, come in. You'll feel free to come in. And then write whatever you want. That's fine. But you need to give restaurants time.
But then owners as well, right? Yeah, exactly. You know exactly what I'm about to say, which is I've seen a hotel do it where I've opened a restaurant where the hotel wasn't ready, and then they're forcing the opening of the hotel. And then, I mean, the people that know what I'm talking about, I won't name names, but at one point when we were going to do the opening night of the restaurant, we didn't know if the kitchen was going to be functional.
Right.
And I put together but there'll be a couple of people that are going to watch this, they're going to laugh, but I put together a plan to do catering in the car park and feed the food through the window of the kitchen to give the impression it was coming out of the kitchen. And all of this was because the pressure to get open, because we've spent so much money and there's been some delays and everything. Now, of course, I get that because I've also managed a restaurant opening as a whole project to do the build. And it got seriously delayed and it causes so much grief. But if you're forcing the opening, you probably know 10 times more stories than I do. You force the opening. You're now opening 10 days before. You've done one friends and family. You're charging full whack. And like you say, no one's ready.
Yeah.
And then and if you start badly, and the problem with Dubai is, if you start badly, you're screwed.
Yeah, look, one restaurateur sort of told me a long time ago, he said exactly what you just said. Dubai, you have one chance to get it right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're operational, not operational, you've got one chance to impress, and then that's it, see you later. Which I think is really unfair.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you worked in London. I worked in London. I did 20 years in the West then. There's a big difference. I know people that went to London and opened restaurants from Dubai. One of them was the main.
Right.
And bravo, Joey Gazelle.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Legend.
For going and doing that.
Well
Fantastic.
done. Big time.
And he was overseeing Canary Club as well. And I did Canary Club whilst he was opening in London. So I was right there when that was happening. And also Orange Hospitality opened Il Boro in Mayfair. And the only thing I knew them both very well at the time. And I remember saying, my memories of the UK was the difference is you open in the UK, no one goes. So you do the big thing, but no one goes, right? You're very, very, very quiet in the beginning. And then it gets known and people go and word of mouth spreads and everything like this. And then suddenly it takes off and you stabilize, if you're lucky and they've done very well. Dubai is very different. So Dubai opens.
The opposite almost.
Yeah, it's the complete opposite. Dubai opens and everyone goes, Chef JKP has opened a new restaurant. Over it goes and we're taking pictures and everything like this. And suddenly it's the place and then...
How long?
For how long? And that's the thing is that you've got about getting known is pretty easy. Staying there is extremely tough.
Extremely tough.
Because it wears off real quick.
Right. 100%.
And different areas open up and everything else. And so when you say you don't think it's fair, I think it focuses people in openings that you've got one chance. Those that know you've only got one chance, you kind of zoom in and you're like, we cannot get this wrong.
Right.
Having said that, it amazes me how many people get it wrong.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you said earlier, Shane McNeil, and talking about openings.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an art to open, and owners think it's easy. Oh yeah, but you've opened restaurants before. Every restaurant is different. It's a different beast, and you're contending with so many things that you're not in control of. You're just not in control of civil defense, and
I was about to say
so
inspections,
many things, and you have to contend with that. Plus the pressure from the stakeholders to bring in the ROI immediately.
Yeah.
And plus we've done a huge marketing campaign and spent 3 million. I mean, what? Okay, great. Well done. Congratulations on spending so much money on the marketing when actually we need a sink.
Yeah.
like it's all of those sorts of details.
We could do with some bins.
You know what I mean?
Like, the venue's not finished, and you've just gone and spent that amount
but again,
of money
the other
on
one is
marketing.
that, and the other, I say a lot to different business owners. If you, why would you put, and no disrespect to Fiat, but why would you put a Fiat car engine into a Rolls Royce? What I mean by that is that if you've got this beautiful restaurant, right, you need a commercial kitchen or commercial equipment that's going to last you 20 years, because that's your engine, that's your heart. And that's what's essentially going to also bring you a large part of the revenue, right? The other thing is that a lot of owners tend to just spend super cheap equipment in the kitchens or whatever it may, at the bar, whatever, super cheap. Two months later, it's broken. Engineers have to constantly come in, and then you have to repair or buy new. And that's the other thing that sort of, I think, why on earth would you not just listen to me? I'm not trying to rip you off. I'm actually long-term trying to future-proof your business.
Well, it's because I think that a lot of people, I think there's a lot of owners that do understand the cost. Having said that, there's a lot of corner cutting that goes on, and sometimes you get away with it. Now, I think the counterproductive thing is that if you get away with it once, it doesn't mean you'll get away with it all the time.
Right.
So when people tell the stories of, no, I got the fridges from this guy. Do you know what I mean? And they were fine. And then in come the fridges from this guy, and then they're not fine.
Yeah.
And the problem with this guy is that there's not much resources to fall back on.
Fair enough.
He's a one-man show that's got you your fridges, and you've got no real warranties and everything like that. And like I say, you end up, like with your Fiat analogy, you end up with this beautiful looking space, but it's not functioning correctly.
Yeah.
And it's a recipe, pardon the pun, for disaster.
For sure. And then look, you opened in winter, which is great, but then the condensers are dying in April, May, June because of the summer.
Yeah.
It's all of these things you have to really understand, but it's not until you've sort of failed and made those mistakes or worked in these types of places where you're just like, let me help you, but just listen.
But that's it. Let me help. Like, it's not going to work because again, what you don't want in a restaurant is you don't want to go to the guests in the first 4, 6, 8 weeks and tell them all the things you can't do.
Yeah.
Hi, welcome to such and such. I'll be your waiter this evening. The 86 items are this, and this. And it's because of exactly what you said, where people are scrimping on the backbone of there are other things to scrimp of. I'm not going to give away trade secrets, but there are other things you can value engineer. There are
100%.
There's a lot of lighting elements that look really good that you can get for really cheap.
Yes.
But your kitchen, your bar, and your mic cross, you know what I mean?
Right.
You shouldn't scrimp on those.
Yes.
There is one thing, because funnily enough, the time is flying. Do you know what I mean? And there's one thing I wanted to ask you about is you started your podcast for 2 reasons, and what were they? Because I think they're fascinating for how you started.
Yeah, look, one of the reasons was because we, a lot of from the Dubai Chefs Collective, when we started it again, sort of 5 years ago, there was a consensus that super young chefs, were watching sort of TikTok, Instagram, and thinking they could become a fully fledged head chef within 3 months. So that was that. So we wanted to tell the story and the truth about what it takes to be at the very top of the game. And also, I personally saw the incredible talents that we have in this region. And I'm not just talking about chefs, I'm talking about restaurateurs, operators, food writers. And I wanted to be able to tell that story to a much wider audience, a global audience, because the region has done so much for me in my career. And in a very small way, I wanted to give back. And I just thought, and it was actually my wife who was badgering me for ages, saying you should do a podcast. And I was like, what is a podcast? I had no idea what a podcast was. But because I studied music, I learned about, microphones, so on and so forth. And
what music did you study?
So piano, guitar, and drums.
Oh, wow. You can play all three?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Who were your musical inspirations?
Oh my God! So because from South America, don't forget. So I actually played in Glastonbury, Notting Hill in a samba band. So you're talking about 45 people. So all drums, orchestrating.
Wow!
And then when I was much younger, of course, it was all about heavy metal, punk rock, things like this. But because we studied music, I liked everything, even Cuban jazz and things like this. So I didn't have one; I had many. And I still do to this day. I love music, and same as food. I think they're very similar in terms of styles and where they take you back to.
The creativity,
yes,
the memories and everything like that.
So then got the podcast done. I didn't sort of take it super seriously. I just wanted to say those things, and then 5 years later, we're 11 seasons in. The show is now on Emirates Airlines, which I'm incredibly proud about, because the show's never about me. It's always about the guest and what value they can bring. And for me, the podcast, I see it very much as a restaurant. It's of service to people who listen. So it's always about the childhood food memory of the guest. Then we talk about the ups and downs, the business things, funny things. And then at the end, there's the sort of funny questions. And, we wrap it up. But
how much has it changed you as a chef? Because chefs don't normally get to sit down and actually ask you've had everyone, in Dubai, you've had real top of the line people on. And you don't, unless you're doing a podcast, as I found as well, you don't normally get to ask people whatever you want, And how has it changed you as a chef?
Yeah, it's massively changed me. Not just as a chef, I think just as a human. Understanding psychology and also, you think that one person's got a specific sort of story, and then they go down another tangent, and then you understand what they had to do to endure to become where they are today. And also listening to owners, to food writers. So it's given me a huge scope to really learn what it takes to be in every single aspect of hospitality. And I was saying to you earlier, I spoke to 2 clinical psychologists, and for them to sort of break down psychology, what happens to not just chefs and restaurateurs, professionals at the highest possible levels when it comes to burnout and stress. So it's been a real phenomenal journey, and I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep pushing, because I just think, again, as cliche as it sounds, food is something that can bring everybody together to the table. And no matter what quarrels you may have, it can always be spoken about at the table. You can share somebody's culture with them at the table to try and understand them further, because, again, very much like that table analogy that I told you at the beginning, during my childhood, it was the place where we sat down, talked about the day, and, whether it was a great conversation, bad conversation, didn't matter, because we were just talking about, food and breaking bread and those sorts of things. And I just think that particular art seems to have died, unfortunately.
Well, I think people need to understand that dinner should be an event. It should be an event. It should be adventurous. You should be trying new things. Because you can make it incredibly exciting, and I agree with you 100%. And it sort of moves me on to a question that I like asking the hospitality people, because it's like, where do you think the industry is going?
Yeah, look,
To caveat, sorry, just kind of, it's more about technology. I do say to waiters and waitresses, if you don't want to be replaced by a robot, don't act like one. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know how many of them understand
what an
it.
amazing thing to say.
But this
Genuinely.
thing is like, if you don't want to be, don't act like it. Engage your personality. Owners, trading managers, hotels, get the personality out of the team because they all have one. You just got to go in there and get it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you will be replaced by a robot.
100%. And look, I love this industry. I love hospitality, really. It is a dying trade. I think it is a dying trade and it's scary.
Yeah.
But that's why I want to talk about it as much as I possibly can, try to attract fresh new blood into the game, but at the same time, not to make those kitchens super scary, not to work 20 hours a day or 100 hours a week.
But how are you doing that then? What's your kind of strategy around getting the same results without that? Because the pressure's the pressure. If you have a busy restaurant, the kitchen just kicks off and you got to get stuck in.
I think I see running a brigade, brigade I'm talking restaurant and back of house, as a football team or as a Premier League best of the best. You know, your job as the coach is to bring out the best in everybody. And what does that mean? Well, we have to sit down as a team and understand, okay, how can we get the best out of everybody? I don't believe that you need to be working those hours to get those incredible results. So if you look at what Heston Blumenthal was doing 10 years ago, he said, I'm going to give, so at 2 Michelin stars, Knightsbridge, dinner by Heston, he was giving his team 3 days off a week. Right? So what does that mean? It means that I can focus on my family. It means I can have a few rest days and all of those sorts of things. So there's always solutions to the problem. There's always a solution. And the industry has to change because if you're talking about, okay, let's say 1 million chefs, from those million, how many of them are going to work 20 hours a day, 100 hours a week consistently? You can't think. You can't. And I was there. You can't. You're not thinking. You're not yourself, right? So things have to change. We have to improve ways. We don't want to become robots, and you're absolutely right, and I completely agree with you. But there has to be that change, and because if we don't, then there will be no more waiters. There will be no more chefs. Everything will be robots, and that's it. So that's what I'm saying.
Oh, that's so scary.
And it's very scary.
And
you know, so the owner of Three Phils, he was on season 3 of my show, and he said, "Do you know what, James and Ahmed, absolute, really,
I've met him a few times.
Gentleman,
it's awesome,
right? And he is somebody who is incredibly tuned into hospitality.
And Three Phils is amazing.
And Three Phils
for a restaurant that doesn't serve alcohol."
Yeah.
Stunning
right,
place.
And number one, MENA 50 best restaurants, and also well done to Akmal Anwar, who was also part of the original team, and phenomenal, right? But the comment he made when he was on the show is that something scared him when he was watching a television show in China saying that every restaurant is going to be replacing chefs with robots. And he said, he was like, that was scary to me, and that's not going to happen. So the only way that's going to change is for us to have open and honest conversations and be like, look, we have to work hard, we have to have the standards, but we need to also find a balance in order for us to execute at the best possible levels. And you look at some of the restaurants here in Dubai, they are doing it.
Yeah.
They're really the front runners for that sort of culture. And you've got some phenomenal people and talents who are really wanting to change the game, and they are doing it.
Well, I think that what kind of robot, I was actually thinking about it when you were saying it. I was thinking the one thing that a robot cannot do, and I'd argue this, and I don't care if there are robots that people think can do this, they can't have passion.
Right.
And I remember being a waiter, right? And in the UK, being a waiter, it's not like, oh, he's a waiter. Like if you're coming out of school in 1992, when I left school, I was an engineer. But if you're coming out of school at 1992 and you're going, I want to be a waiter, like your parents are going to give you a slap, because it's not the type of country where, you know, being a waiter is a career, right? But I remember becoming a waiter, and I wanted, and I'm not just saying this because I'm sat here on camera, I wanted to affect somebody's night. I've said some stuff you wouldn't believe to guests, as far as trying to make them laugh or be sarcastic and everything like that. And people that work with me know that I'm like that. But the best people I've worked with are the ones that in their core, they want to affect someone's night out. And the very best places in Dubai, and the very best places that are doing it, those people work there. And a robot can't do that. You'll program a robot to make sure that everything's perfect and that everything lands on time. Yeah. But it's about waking up and going to work and going, I want somebody to be affected by what I'm doing. And you go those, but now, sorry, I'm sort of on a bit of a spiral, but it's like you don't suddenly turn into a performer.
No.
But it means there's micro moments that happen throughout your shift where you are just trying to make sure they remember what happened.
Look,
you know?
100%. And I said this during when I was talking to the clinical psychologists. I said, when I think about it, a waiter, and it doesn't matter if it's in a Pizza Express or a 3-star Michelin, a waiter has to be a psychologist within the first 3 seconds of meeting that guest to make their night incredible.
Yeah.
Because then you can gauge the guest immediately. And you're absolutely right. You can make somebody's night or experience by literally honing in and understanding them. A robot will never do that.
And like I say, it's the chefs in the kitchen that under pressure, taking the grief. Do you know what I mean? Because again, there are certain people that don't work in restaurants, they just go to restaurants. You cannot explain to somebody what it feels like when you've opened the doors, you're really busy, and it doesn't matter what the hostesses have done. The section gets double sat, triple sat, and the printer just starts going like this, and you're in the weeds. You cannot explain what that feels like, and it's awful. But you've got no other option just to dig in and get through it. And every plate that goes out is one step closer to this being over. But the ones that make it the best experiences is where, like I say, the guys in the kitchen are like, even though we're in this position, I'm not going down. I'm not going down. We're not going down. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to cut any corners. And I've seen some of the best inside chefs and past managers that even though the easiest thing to do is send it to the guest because we've got to get through this, and they'll send it back, and the chef will go, no, do it again. And it almost makes the situation worse, but the attention to detail and the passion to make sure that even though the guest is going to wait, when they actually get it, they go, okay, right, that's worth it. That's what a robot can't do.
Yeah, and it's incredibly important.
Yeah.
It's really important. But yeah, and also the sort of camaraderie and the feeling afterwards that you got through it together is also amazing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, because you end the shift and everyone looks at each other and goes, well done. Yeah. And then the whole team are looking at the senior managers and going, no problem, but I'm not doing that tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So fix it.
Yeah. I'm not going to walk in. I'm not going to go to the walk-in freezer and cry again. Yeah.
So. Would you open your own restaurant?
That's a really good question, and I get asked it all the time. So I think at some point I have to bite the bullet and do it because I don't ever want to regret anything. So I think I probably would, but I would do it on the proviso. I would probably open a sort of casual place where people would frequent often, and great price point, all of those sorts of things, and you have people like yourself who are bubbly and make you feel welcome and those sorts of things. But I would also want to open a very small but luxury fine dining place because it's in me. I can't get rid of it. I tried, but I can't.
What would be your cuisine?
Do you know? I think it would be that everybody talks about third culture cuisine nowadays. You know, it's basically a mix of different things from where you're from, right? So for me, if I was to do a cuisine, and okay, if we talk about the fine dining, I would do a tasting menu, and it's a journey, of course, of all the experiences and places where I've been. And one thing that I've always banged on about for a long time is if you look at restaurants, there's modern British, modern French, modern Japanese. There's nothing modern Emirati or super modern Middle Eastern. Mm-hmm. So why not? And I believe there is an absolute place now for that type of cuisine to start to come in, and you see it with a few chefs, and I think it's incredible, you know.
Well, look, I mean, the time has flown, and I've loved this, and I feel that we met for the first time, you know, this evening, and I just think I could talk to you for hours about this. You're another advert for why I need to start doing 2-hour episodes.
Well, you should do it, Chief. I changed over to the 2-hour dark side. It's a game changer.
Oh, I want to, because I've done so many where I'm like, you know what, we haven't even spoken about that or that or that. But with all Tasty Humans episodes, I do want to say sort of at the end, if there's one thing that you would say to a young person that wants to get into this industry, and instead of it being the cliched, what's the one thing you would say? But in order for them to understand where it needs to go and how it needs to return, what would be that one thing you would say?
The one thing I would say, and I wish I did this when I was younger, is if you're going to go into the industry, go in full on, head first, and head to the very best top of the top place. So you really understand the highest standards possible. Experience it. If it's not for you, it's okay. But at least you know where to go and what you can experience. Because it's very difficult to do it the other way around. If you're young, because once you go into the best places, you're going to be surrounded by passion. You're going to be surrounded by high performers who will then, at the same time, give you that fire to push yourself to the best and, you know, the toughest possible limits, right? It's very difficult to do it the other way around. So that's what I would say to them. Go to the very best places, really push yourself, understand if it's really for you, and if it is, you know, the sky's the limit, because hospitality can, that's what my dad said to me. He said, it can take you around the world. You can meet incredible people and you can just have a phenomenal life and you'll never be out of a job because everybody needs to eat.
Do you know what? That's beautiful. And we're going to end right there. So, James, thank you so much for coming on. I wish you all the best and I look forward to seeing your podcast as well for many, many more years to come.
No, and listen, thank you very much. Absolute honor to be here. It's a hallowed seat. So really,
seat.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great evening.